$1,000, but it would be virtually impossible for a student to participate in all the sports all the way along. So that's what Jared felt comfortable setting for that, if that makes sense. Just a few fee adjustments that have come up. One would be in the middle school, the couple of fee adjustments are $18 instead of $15 for a PE uniform. I've got the breakdown of that those costs have gone up significantly, and this is on the conservative side of that. I missed the locker rental. They tried to make lockers optional at the middle schools. That didn't work. That was an experimental year, so they want to go back to the required fee on that, on lockers. Then if you go down to the exploring technology fax expiration, again, a rise in cost of materials from 10 to 15. Band, choir, and orchestra. I'm sorry, I left off the was there. Well, no, I should have left off the was. So some of those were $3. The guitar was $3, but we just made them all consistent across there, $5. And that is basically to cover instrument repairs that they're experiencing, a new reed, a new guitar string, those kind of things that they are experiencing in class. And they would rather provide those for the students as those things happen, rather than stop the production and wait to get a new reed or a guitar string. One of the other things at the middle schools, we had several things happening at the middle schools that were not reflected on the fee schedule. One of those was an after-school program costume cost, so we raised that after-school programming costs for classes from 25 to 30 to cover some of that. Again, that's very conservative. The schools are having to crunch to meet that additional cost and cut out some things. And then the All-State Choir Festival, ski trip, lagoon trip, some of those were brought up in the school fee audit, that they showed up on the school's fees for students, but were nowhere to be found on our fee schedule. So we corrected those here, so they're here as well. And then you can see the high school maximum fee there that I talked about. If you flip the page, we went from 22 to 25 for an advanced choir, $3 to $5 for guitar repair supplies. The truancy citation fee that's down there further, that's been something that's in board policy. It's on your attendance policy, but that is fee waivable. So if you skip school and they charge a fine for you, you can fee waive that fine as well. So, and that was required by our fee audit. You'll notice the cheer going up from $1,400 to $1,300, or from $1,300 to $1,400. That's modest. When you consider that they started competitive cheer this year, and I know that's a steep-looking fee, but that's a modest raise on that fee for the amount of extra cost with that program for students. I took off the last line under notes because I don't think it's consistent with the new fee policy and with what we want to communicate anyway. And it basically said that we can't anticipate some fees, and so we should just allow some other fees to happen because they can't be anticipated. And I don't think that's consistent with what the state's trying to accomplish with the fee policy, to say we need to be able to anticipate that. So those are the suggested changes on the fee schedule.
Excellent. Any questions for Tim? Thank you so much for all your work.
You're welcome.
Very well done. Agenda, are you ready? Okay. Now we will go to our recognition section of our agenda. This will be presented by Superintendent Norton and Dave Swenson.
Thank you. Well, Rigo, before I read about why you're here tonight. We thought it'd be nice if we could see and hear from the impact that you've had on the community. Not only just the community in general, but also the school community. So we're going to have Tim just hit a little video shot here.
Thank you, Rigo from Green Canyon, LIA. Love you.
Hey Rigo, it's Isa from Green Canyons LA. I want to thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Love you. Congratulations. Peace.
Hey Rigo, this is Giselle. I'm one of your scholarship recipients, and I just wanted to thank you so much for giving everyone the chance you never had and just making the world a different place for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rigo from Logan High, LIA.
Hi, Rigo. I want to thank you for all your help with our Latinos in Action at Logan High School over the years. You made a big difference in their lives, and we're very grateful for your help and your support and making a difference in the Latino culture in Logan.
Thank you, Rigo from Skyview, LA. Woo!
Okay, go.
Rigo, I just wanted to say thank you for being a great example and a great influence among my students. They really look up to you, and so do I.
Thanks Rigo for all you do. We love you.
My name is John Melt.
He's impressed too. So anyway, also have Mariah and Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind both coming up here. We are hoping to have a couple more students come, but Mariah is the Latinos in Action teacher at Green Canyon High School, and you know Vanessa, who was at Green Canyon and also started up at Skyview, which she is now a director over the northern area for the Latinos in Action organization. So I'd like to just have them take just a few minutes and just share some of their thoughts and of what impact you've had on their programs.
Well, I'm not surprised that we are doing this for you, but I was thinking 10 years ago at Skyview, but then Dave corrected me. It's like almost like 14 years ago when Tim, right there, he approached me and said, hey, we want to start this program. It's called Latinos in Action, and we would like you to, help teach it. So I did, with the help of a teacher there in the classroom, and then I did have your kids, right, in my class. I think I've had all of them in our LIA class, in our Latinos in Action. So thanks to them being in the class and the connection they made with you, you were able to bring, the first thing that you brought was food. And a food to a parent night, a Latino parent night, that's where you're going to get the parents' involvement right there. So thanks to your donations and your support, and you wanted these parents to have the opportunity to see what their students could do, to empower them, because that's the Latinos in Action mission statement. It's to empower a Latino youth to strengthen and lead in the community. And absolutely, you have done that, coming to the class and talking to them about college, career, and even just to be visible, to be present in our school community. So really appreciate that. I love how when you started the LEAP scholarship and I've loved being in that gala and seeing the difference that you're making in these kids' lives. So thank you.
Well, I'm Mariah, and I had big shoes to fill, but stepping in and getting to know you and your lovely wife and getting to know the passion that you have for this community, I personally was awed and inspired by your lesson that you came and taught to our class, and I think of it often. He related to the students how their parents are in the trenches holding their kids on their shoulders, and he draws this picture, and it has burned in my memory and will be there till the day I die, because you're there. you are holding these students on your shoulders. And I did have a lot of kids that had planned on being here, and if you know our community, they got to work and all these other things and didn't make it, but they sent me text messages. So I have a couple little highlights. If you could just tell him and his wife, thank you. I am able to pursue the occupational therapy without the stress of how I'm going to be able to pay for college. I have a high GPA thanks to those special people out there like you that allow us to dedicate our time fully to our futures. I first learned about the LEAP when Rigo came to our class at Green Canyon High School to present to my Latinos in Action class. His mission statement and passion to help the Latino population and community reach great heights really inspired me as a young Latina. When Rigo speaks about his program, you can tell he truly loves and wants to assist the Latino community through higher education. I was fortunate enough to have been chosen as a recipient for the LEAP scholarship and was presented the award by his wife, Rigo, Missy, and Mariah. We all got to go and celebrate in the classes, and that burned in their memories. They all made that experience for me truly special and heartwarming. Also, at the gala, it was a phenomenal experience that I didn't know how to act because it was so fancy. LOL. Fast forward, I am now at Utah State attending the Huntsman School of Business whilst majoring in property management with a minor in real estate. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Thank you for dedicating your life to helping young adults like me. Thank you for inspiring generations. And most importantly, thank you for believing in me. I know that that's only a few. You really have touched lives and generations of kids and families, not only to believe in themselves, but to be able to climb that hill and to get to somewhere that will benefit everyone around them. So you are amazing, and thank you so much for everything you continue to keep doing.
Rigo Chaparro's story is one of determination and grit. Born and raised in Chihuahua, Mexico, in a little town called Madero, he recalls working side by side with his parents and siblings to make ends meet. Rigo attended a small school with 3 classrooms, which held 2 grades. Each day, classes were held from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., with a 3-hour break at noon when students would be dismissed to help pick produce with their families. As they labored in the heat and difficult conditions, Rigo's father vowed that he would find a way to move his family to better conditions in the United States. This opportunity presented itself when Rigo's father was contracted to become a sheep herder in Afton, Wyoming. Rigo's father commuted back and forth between Mexico and Afton for years, facing many challenges and hardships. They finally moved to Afton for good when Rigo was in 7th grade. It was during that year when Rigo had an experience that made a permanent impression on him and changed the course of his life. After working hard on an assignment for school, Rigo approached the teacher and said, "Hey, I'm pretty excited I got a B+ on my paper." The teacher responded, "You know, that's pretty good for a Mexican." Recounting the moment, Rigo said, "That comment really rubbed me the wrong way, and he's such a nice guy that he probably didn't mean it that way, but that's how I took it." From then on, Rigo was driven to prove that he could accomplish whatever he put in his mind through hard work and expanding his own education and capabilities. This determination to rise above prejudice motivated Rigo as he attended Weber State University on a leadership scholarship and eventually graduated with a degree in accounting. It has continued to be a driving force in his career as an agent for State Farm Insurance, a career which took him from Colorado to Wyoming and then to Utah, first in Salt Lake and eventually here to Cache Valley in 2005. Rigo's State Farm Agency in Smithfield has been very successful, something he credits to the agency's commitment to giving back to its community and to generously supporting local school teams and organizations. Rigo's influence, however, extends well beyond donations from his insurance agency. Inspiring, motivating, supporting, and advocating for Latinos in Cache Valley has become his mission. In the fall of 2009, Dave Swenson, who at the time was principal at Skyview High School, approached Rigo with an idea of holding a Latino parent evening. Rigo helped to organize that event where parents were given access to a computer lab and taught how they could view their children's grades and become more involved in their education. Rigo was instrumental in those first Latino parent meetings. And it helped a lot because, again, our first meeting I recall having where not very many people showed up, and the next one he said, I'll take care of the food. And from then on, we had many, many parents come. But then it was the next year is when he got involved with the Latinos in Action, and it's just taken off since then. Over the years, Rigo's circle of influence and support for the Latino community expanded as he began to visit Cache County School District classrooms to speak to students in Latinos in Action and Diversity Discovery classes, something he still does today. He frequently relates his story from his childhood with students. My dad said, if you imagine a big truck with big tires and they go through mud, they leave a big old mud track. If I'm sitting in front of you in this track, all you can see is what's on the ground. That's all. Then his father said, if you get on my shoulders and look out at what the possibilities are, it's a better education, better jobs, more money. Rigo always encourages students to push past limitations and expectations, or the inclination to just settle for what life may offer, to look beyond the muddy tire track and challenge themselves to accomplish great things, starting with a good education. I tell kids, how can we change the culture of Latinos in Cache Valley, Rigo said. If all that we're doing is labor, why not put yourself as the superintendent, a principal, or a mayor? Then you can push change because you are leading those discussions. Rigo and his wife, Lisa, are the founders of the Leadership, Educational Achievement, and Prosperity Scholarship, which is LEAP. LEAP offers students from all the Cache Valley high schools, many of whom are first-generation citizens, a means to attain higher education. Each year, 25 to 30 students are awarded 4 full scholarships. Rigo and Lisa, along with the USU Latino Cultural Center, follow and care for these students during their college years. The scholarships are funded by Utah State University, Bridgerland Technical College, generous community members, private business owners, and organizations. Rigo Shapiro is the kind of man that has always been inclusive of everyone and anyone, shared Lorene Hale, Cache County School District Elementary Education Administrative Assistant and longtime friend of the Shapiros. He grew up with adversity and shouldered it well. This combination of traits has led to his becoming a great philanthropist. He cares for his children and the children of others. He wants to teach students about intergenerational wealth, but also he wants them to learn how to work and appreciate what they have. Even in his adult life, he has encountered twists and unwelcome life happenings that have only strengthened his desire to become a more caring, a more understanding, and more compassionate member of society. By educating students and their families and encouraging them to look beyond the muddy tire tracks, Rigo has made a difference in our community that is difficult to quantify. Because of his support, efforts, and example, Latino students in Cache Valley have opportunities to pursue a higher education that previously felt unattainable. We are thrilled to honor Rigo Shapiro as super supporter of education. Come on up, Rigo. we'd like to have Terry Rhodes, who will present you with this gift.
This is an original painting, only one exists, from Lester Lee at Skyview. I cry at cartoons too. And I appreciate the fact that it represents, or that is a picture, for those of you who can't see, of a horse-drawn team and hay harvest in Cache Valley. And so that goes back to Rigo's agricultural roots and his days in the field and what he has risen to. Thanks for what you do.
Wow. I think I'm mostly touched. One, I tell my kids that I was born in the back of a hay wagon, so that's pretty special. But I think the majority of the success that we've had in the Valley volunteering is you folks. You've always supported us, our ideas. I remember when I came and presented here, you're just so willing to, do whatever we need. And the benefit is to our Latino students. And so it's humbling, but the real honor should go to you folks. Because it's making such a huge difference for these kids. It's hard to quantify, like you said. The gala and those kids coming through and accepting their scholarships, I just cry every time, and you can see I cry pretty easy like you. But really, my sweet wife every February and April pulls her hair out with all the work she has to do. And then I get the glory, right? But thank you. But what a great valley we live in. Such generous people to help. This year it's growing. We had 84 applications. We could only do 53 scholarships, but that's a lot. And just people and their donations, and it's just been an incredible ride. So thank you. I know you guys are busy, so I'll stop. But I could go on about just what great people you are and how you give back to our community. So thank you.
Oh, stay up here. Have Lisa come up.
Yeah. Lisa, come up. Rico, do you want a Kleenex?
Rico's the face.
Lisa, do you need a Kleenex too? Okay, hang on. Help hold the camera.
Wait till we make you cry for you. All right, here we go. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Those of you who are here for the recognition are welcome to leave. This is the moment to escape so you don't have to listen to the rest of the business of the meeting. They escaped already. Okay, next on our agenda is the County Health Data and Sex Education Instructional Materials, which sounds really crass after something such a nice presentation, but it is. And Brittany Foster will attempt to make it
Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to smile about this. This isn't exactly as uplifting as the previous presentation. We each year review our sex education instructional materials with our sex education instructional materials committee. And we this year we reviewed the materials for the individual and family relations class, which includes a concurrent enrollment and a non-concurrent enrollment, and then also the HDFS Human Development course. So all the materials there are in a Google Drive that you should have seen, and all those materials have been approved by the committee. So feel free to enjoy all of the sex education that you can handle over the next couple of weeks. One thing that I do want to point out in the folder, there's a separate folder that's labeled HDFS, and that is the textbook for the HDFS course, and it is not used in the non-concurrent enrollment version, or the individual and family relations class. It's only used for the concurrent enrollment class, and that textbook was selected. We had a few different options that Utah State gave us that we could choose from, and we selected that version because it was the same textbook that the neighboring districts were using, so we felt like we could all be on the same page using the same book. So, any questions about that before we move on to the fun sex ed, or the sex, let me think of other words to use.
While you're thinking, I'll just remind the board that more and more, and I'm seeing it in the legislature this year, that more and more the legislature is putting the expectation on us that we will approve curriculum. So make sure you read up on your sex ed curriculum.
There's some fun stuff in there. Actually, it's very... It's actually really informing. I learned some stuff, so I'm sure you will too.
I was hoping that if we put it on the agenda, we might get a lot of people showing up tonight.
Maybe the next one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, maybe after they have a chance to look through the folder.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So in coordination with requesting approval for materials, we also have to share the health data for our health department. So one thing I want to clarify is that the data I'm going to share with you is not specific to our students. It is specific to our health department. So that includes everyone in our county and the rest of Bear River Health Department. So some of the data will be specific to our communities, but most of it is at large. And the reason for sharing that is because it's important for us to have a quality sex education program, because it helps to keep our community safe. So, and my mouse doesn't want to work. So there are 4 things that I have to report on. Teen pregnancy rates for the health department. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Child sexual abuse, and the only data I have for that is state data. I don't have our health department data. Sexually transmitted diseases and infections data, and pornography complaints. So this is our data for 2020. They're a couple of years back. Each time I'm about 2 years ahead, or or behind with the data. So the birth rates for our health department are considerably lower than the U.S. and Utah average. We have 8.1. Oh shoot, and I can't remember. I think it's per.
Is it per 100 or 1,000?
I think it's per 1,000. Yes, I should have added that on here. Actually, does it say on the bottom? Nope. And then this one is going to be more specific to our community, in that the highest community birth rate would be North Logan with 11.7, and then Hiram 9.6, Smithfield 6.5, and then 4.8 is other, and that includes some of Rich County as well as Cache County. And here is the child sexual abuse data. The data here is we've got 14.3% of allegations were confirmed allegations in regard to sexual abuse. And then these are our rates of reported STDs for the last 5 years. So you can see that. Well, I don't know if you want me to, you guys can see it all, but that's just what that data is. And then here's specific to our health department. Bear River's at the top, and then you can see the other health departments throughout the state and how we compare with each of those. We're fairly middle of the line, maybe a little bit on the low end. And then our sexually transmitted diseases. This is actually the same graph I shared with you last year. I don't have new data for this specific information that they've got, but you can see the 2021 data here. And chlamydia cases. This one is been in the news a little bit more frequently lately, just so you're aware. So those are the chlamydia rates. And then another one that has been in the news a lot lately, if you haven't been following, well, probably not following, but syphilis cases are increasing across the nation over the last few years. And then pornography complaints, we have not had any this year, so, or we didn't have any last year either. So all of the data is included in there's a link to the drive there if you want to look through the data more closely. Any questions on the sex education materials or health data?
No questions on those, on the statistics?
Stat nerd. These tables are exciting. So thank you.
Cool. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about them next time.
All right. Thanks, Brittany.
Yep.
And it looks like you're presenting the next one also, which is
Yes.
LEA license requests.
Yes. So I came in the beginning of the year and requested approval for LEA licenses, and we've had a few teachers who've either been hired mid-year or had a change in their teaching position middle of the year. So we just need to request LEA licenses for those individuals. Any questions on those?
So these are people who don't have certified teacher, professional teacher licenses.
Yes. So all of them are in the process of getting them. One of them is an athletic trainer at the high school, so he will not be going. That's Mr. Jackson. Is that his name on there? No, I'm trying to. Okay. So he's a PE. Yes. So we're requesting a PE license because we changed the course that he's teaching to fall under PE. Okay. So he needs to have a PE LEA specific endorsement. And then the others are all students who've just graduated and we're waiting for university recommendation, but we need to have them teaching under a license in the meantime while we wait.
So there are only 3 on this list. Is that what you expected us to see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
And then I'm the next one too.
All right, instructional materials policy. Well, it's good for you to switch it off with Tim.
Yeah. So this policy came about, the legislature asked the legislative audit team to do an audit of districts and whether or not they had curriculum policies or instructional materials policies. We did not have one. And one of the recommendations of that legislative audit team was for the state legislature to pass legislation that districts have one, which they have done this legislative session. So we began working on this policy December, probably in December. Paula and I got a committee together. Kathy served on the committee, and there were we had Jake Downs on the committee, who's our elementary literacy specialist, Ashley Addis, who's our secondary literacy specialist, and then we had a few teachers that were on the committee as well. And we looked at several we looked at the model policies from USBA, and then we also looked at several policies that were in place in neighboring districts, and we kind of combined what we liked the best out of all of them and put together this policy. So the policy starts, we identify what we consider to be primary instructional materials, and those would be instructional materials that are either adopted at the district level with a district committee under the direction of either Paula for elementary or myself for secondary. And then we would run down to school level in the event that maybe there's a course that's only taught at a specific school where we might need to adopt a curriculum. And in that case, the school could do that under the direction of either Paula or myself, depending on the grade level. And then we move to supplemental instructional materials, which would be materials that are meant to supplement an adopted curriculum that we already have. And those could be district level adopted, school level adopted, or classroom level created, not necessarily adopted. That one is probably the most, one of the most concern for parents, I believe, because it's not an adopted curriculum. So we worked together to create a vetting tool that we will ask teachers to use for any curriculum that they would use that is not adopted at the school or district level, and that they work with their PLC team to go through that vetting tool and make sure that the curriculum or instructional materials they're using would fall in line with our expectations for what curriculum and instructional materials would look like. And then the next part runs down to if a parent or a student has a concern about instructional materials, it gives them a process for requesting a review of those. So it would start at the school level with a school level committee. Then it would move, if the parent or student doesn't feel satisfied with the decision, it could move to the district level, and then the district committee would make a decision from there. Then it also includes a little bit of language for classroom libraries and just a reference of what to do if a parent feels like something falls under the sensitive materials and how they can report that. What questions do you have about the policy?
So just to clarify, though, I mean, because, well, I'm just curious, and Terry, maybe you can answer this as well. What exactly is the difference? I mean, what is the legislation asking districts to do now? Because I feel like we've had these conversations before about materials, and there have been, there has been a process in place, right, for, approving materials. What is the distinction now versus what has been done in the past?
We have seen very little of the actual curriculum. As far as adopting it, and that's what the legislature is moving us toward, due to some issues that a few very loud parents in one particular group that I can think of in Utah who have, I heard testimony from on the floor of the House from a new representative this year who was just began his service in January this year, and it wasn't on the floor, it was in a House Ed committee meeting, and he actually said when the committee asked him, why did you bring this forward, and this was something dealing with curriculum, and he said, well, I had a neighbor whose daughter had this one experience, and so I decided I better do something about it, so I wrote a bill. And so a lot of it is coming from anecdotal evidences of legislators, neighbors, friends, people who reach out to them who feel like mostly it seems like that, like Brittany said, parents are mostly concerned about teachers, rogue teachers, who bring things into their rooms as curriculum that they may not appreciate as parents. So they want more curriculum to be approved through the district, through the board. So through the board, through the district.
So, and I apologize because I think we've had this conversation kind of before, but I just want to be clear. Curriculum is not the same as lesson plan, though, right? So, in other words, you know, if a teacher says something in class, you know, two teachers can teach the same curriculum but have maybe a slightly different approach. Is that right?
Yes.
So what?
But
what do we have to
the
protect
classroom
teachers?
level of selection is the trickiest part, because we want teachers to be able to use their own talents and skill sets that are unique to them.
Right.
That
or
they
their
can
own,
reach.
their own cache of knowledge.
Right, exactly. But they can't do it without having that approved. And yes, curriculum is different than I don't think curriculum is different than
So we're in this policy, we're calling it instructional materials, which would include anything that is used to help learning in the classroom. And that could incorporate PowerPoints, it could incorporate reading materials, videos, podcasts. I mean, anything that a teacher might bring into the classroom.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. If somebody, you know, hears an interesting podcast and they decide the next day, well, this would be useful, you know, for my students to hear, then can they not introduce that because it has to be approved by the school board first?
No, so if you look at the classroom level materials for the supplement, what we included in there is that we asked that they use our vetting tool and that they go through things with their PLC, which is their collaborative teaching team, and that they work together to decide that those are appropriate materials. However, there are times when a teacher might come across a podcast or a newspaper article, news article, and decide that it needs to be shared because it's very relevant to what they're teaching in the next day or week. And so we've incorporated that into the policy under incidental materials, which would be something that there might not be time to review with a PLC, but you would still use the vetting tool. And the vetting tool just is a checklist of items that they can go through and make sure that it's age appropriate, that it fits the philosophy of our district, that it's not free. Yeah, it's free of bias or stereotype. Or if it does happen to have bias or stereotype, but there is a reason for it. For example, when they teach logical fallacies in English, they have to share those examples. So it just helps a teacher look at a material and decide, would this be appropriate in my classroom? This is something that most teachers are already doing individually on their own. This just gives them a tool that they can use and that we're asking them to consider. The tool, it gives them the option of having a principal sign it if they'd like, but we didn't include in the policy that they have to have a principal's signature or that they have to keep it on file. In the vetting tool, I did put a little caveat: if it's a controversial topic, they should have their principal look at it before they use it.
And so who defines what a controversial topic is then?
So we do have a policy about controversial topics. I can't remember. Well, not sensitive materials. What's the constitutional freedom in schools? It hits on controversial topics.
Yeah. And so by approving this policy, we are approving all of the tools and efforts to control the curriculum that's going into our schools or that's being used in our schools. So we are giving the power to the district by approving this policy. We're giving the power to the district to oversee the curriculum for us.
Yeah,
so does that meet the requirements of what they're proposing then?
Currently, but there were 9 bills opened on just curriculum this year in the legislature.
Most of them went down to defeat.
Yeah, most of them, in their defense, once it gets to the floor of either chamber, common sense will really prevails. And so they'll ask each other legislators ask each other hard questions like, I just saw a bill like this. Why do we need this one too? Why can't we combine these? And so they'll poll them, just like Steve said. They'll be polled, they'll be circled, they'll be tabled, or to be combined with something else, or to just be annihilated and not passed. But it's one of the hot topics in the legislature right now is curriculum oversight.
So it's conceivable that at some point they could be asking boards not just to approve the
we hope
system
not
review within the district, but that we're reviewing materials ourselves.
Could be going to the same level of sex ed,
Right.
but hopefully it
Right.
won't get there.
Right.
At this point in time, we did incorporate into the district level policy, the district level adopted materials, that we would bring them to you for final approval after a committee has selected them. But at the school level, that wouldn't happen, nor at the classroom level, that wouldn't happen. The legislation that just passed just requires that districts have a policy in place for how curriculum will be selected and approved.
Okay, so this meets what?
Yeah, I checked to make sure whatever we incorporated. As we wrote the policy, we looked at the legislative audit suggestions and made sure we incorporated all of those because we assumed that those would make their way into a bill. So when the bill came forward, we had already met everything that was there.
Is that Fillmore's bill? Does that cover the requirements of Fillmore's bill? Because I think in he wanted all district-wide curriculum to be approved by the school board. I can't remember the details.
I don't
of it.
remember if it was him or was it Pulsifer? I don't know.
Fillmore had the most comprehensive one.
Yeah.
That other things have been rolled into.
Yeah. The one that passed last week on the 24th, or I don't remember what day, I checked, and everything that was in that bill, our policy would meet.
Okay.
Now, if something comes up tomorrow, then we might have to revisit, but I feel like we're pretty safe. Yeah, come up.
So we did actually include in the language that the school board may be a part of that district adoption vetting process, and we want that if you have time to even be on that committee. So we'll have parents, teachers, curriculum departments, and then you may be on it as well if you'd like.
That would be Kathy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and we originally did say we would have a board member, but then we realized not every board has somebody that's available to serve on those types of committees, so we changed it to
I would
May.
even say that has the expertise. Right. I mean,
Right.
That's kind of like getting a committee from the community to go down and observe a mechanic working or something and tell the person whether they're doing a good job. I mean,
agreed.
It's kind of absurd.
It is.
And we felt really grateful to have Kathy on our committee, the writing committee, because she'd say, "Wait a minute, let's take a step back. Let's think about this." It was really nice to have somebody from our board who has that expertise.
Yeah. Would you say the net impact on teachers is an increase in workload? I mean, given that they have to, especially that they have to worry about every impromptu, item that they decide they want to insert into their classes?
If you look at the vetting tool, most of the items are things that most of our teachers would do already. They're things they want their students to feel safe in the classroom. They want it to be age appropriate. The vetting tool is something that I don't think will be cumbersome. What I do think it's going to do is help those teachers specifically in language arts and history, where they've been a little reluctant to talk about specific topics because they're not sure if it falls in line with policies, because we haven't had a policy in place. So this policy, I think, will give them that confidence to know I've gone through a vetting tool and this would be an appropriate thing for me to use in my classroom. I've reviewed it with my PLC, and I think it will give them the confidence. We had a history teacher, a couple of English teachers and one history teacher on our committee, and they both were very grateful for the vetting tool and for the policy.
And also by association that we will back them up as they use the tools and the policies. So that's got to give them some confidence that we're all on the same team, we're all on board with what they're doing, as long as they do that. So the one I'm looking at is SB 55, Public School Instructional Material Requirements.
Yes.
It was Fillmore's.
Okay.
And it was enrolled on the 28th. So, yeah. Anyway, it does require, besides adopting policies, requires a process to follow if the board chooses to adopt or approve instructional materials. So,
which we've provided a process in it. It says that we will develop procedures. Paula and I have plans in June to work on a procedure manual, but that will have to wait till school's out.
Yeah.
So, Brittany, this is just one question for the future I'm thinking about. So now that we have this policy, and if we approve it next time, how do the teachers learn about this policy so they know?
That's a good question. I've already visited with Ashley Addis, our secondary literacy specialist, and we've talked about going out and individually meeting with the PLCs to let them know. And she would team up with me on history as well, since we don't have a history specialist. Those are the two main concerned areas. I would probably hit science on my own. There's not as many concerned teachers there. That's probably the approach we would take, and then also share with principals and have them pass along.
I really liked that Alden did go to every school and gave them the information on the inclusive and equity, because from my experience, if you just give it to the principals, it doesn't always make it back to the teachers. And I know that's a big job, but I appreciate that you are looking for ways to get it downstream to where it's actually going to be.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do school level meetings if that seems like that's a better route to go. We just felt like the PLC route gave us an opportunity to get into the weeds with specific content areas.
So when you say the PLC route, are you talking about in each individual school going to the language, arts, and the science PLCs?
And the history.
Is there a bigger group way of doing that, like at the professional developments? Or
We could do it that way. We haven't gotten that far. We just were brainstorming ways of how to get the information
out. Well, just
out.
know that I'm interested in seeing that everybody knows what the policy says.
Okay.
They have worked really hard on this.
I know.
And done a really great job.
I know.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hard work.
Thanks for doing all the editing.
Any other questions or comments? And thanks for participating, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you to you and also Kathy. I mean, that's a lot of work, and I hope that the pendulum stops swinging.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's getting a little silly.
What it all hinges on? Trust. And if we lose that trust between parents and teachers, I don't know, we can't make enough guidelines and rules and procedures.
Right.
And we'll spend the rest of our lives doing that. When the trust is there, and Frank and I had the opportunity of talking to the Rotary Club today, and one of the questions was, how can we lighten the load of teachers and make them not so afraid to do what they want to do in the classroom? And it's trust. These are the same people who live next door to you. They go to your same churches. They shop in the same places, and if you'll give them a chance, they're pretty much right on cue with whatever you want taught in the classroom. But you have to have that confidence, and it has to go both ways.
And unfortunately, as I mentioned before, there are a few very loud parents who carry the day in the media talking about not having trust. And by and large, 90%, 95% of our parents trust their teachers and appreciate their teachers, but they don't speak out. It's the very small minority who are loud and negative that carry the day and create fear for some other parents. So, and legislators.
Well, and even just regular parents don't usually speak to the positive. They only say something if they're bothered by it.
I don't know. I mean, I know we probably have our retreat established, but I think that should be a topic. You know, how can the school board help to facilitate that trust? Are there things that we need to start doing, since we're the public face, to counteract? You know, I think that this trust most of it comes from a very cynical source. Let's be honest. Once you start politicizing something like this, it's easy to sow mistrust for your own, to meet your own aims. So I think it would be a good idea for us to talk about that. When you contrast, like what we just saw with super supporters of education, you see Teachers of the Year come in. I mean, the thing that's so striking is that the people who pass these laws don't come to these meetings.
Right.
They spend no time observing any of this, and then they make stuff up. Yeah, based on conjecture or rumor or things that they hear that happen halfway across the country, or not even stuff that's happening in this community. Right. I mean, it's maddening. So to the extent that we can rally people who, I talk about this in my statistics classes all the time, that a self-selected survey is always horrible. But because it's non-random, it's not representative, and those are the people that show up and make noise. To the extent that we can maybe do a better job of rallying the people who are happy and who do have that trust, I wonder if there's a way to counteract this, even if we just start here in Cache Valley.
Yeah.
Suggestion that was made, I think it was at our JLC.
Today?
No, not today, but a week ago. The meetings all blur together, but
agreed.
It was
especially this.
You know
week.
where you are right now, right?
Yeah. Well, now you guys made me lose my train of thought.
Way to go, Chris.
Trust from JLC. There's a lot of discussion of that in that meeting.
Well, yeah, it's gone. Yeah, it'll come
Okay.
back.
It'll come back. You have the superintendent report.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. Board member reports.
So, did you get any traction on the cost impact of all these audits, and what kind of opportunities we might have to have an answer for that? Because I know there's a lot of work that goes into the preparation and that goes out, and it seems like there should be some type of if we have to absorb all of that, there should be something that we get from that. You know what I mean? To compensate for it.
They need to
Yeah.
give us a
Well,
stipend.
something. I mean, I know, professionally in the work that I'm involved in, that we bid into contracts. There's a cost for audits, and because it's a significant amount of effort, both in resources, human and other, that makes that happen. And so I just wondered if you were able to get any, or what our path forward is there, maybe.
My email back to the state, my sort of unfiltered email back to the state, after the last one that we just started, when we got another request, it did make it to the state superintendent, who said, I had no idea you were so burdened. I mean, they know there's a lot, but they don't know specifically, and that's why I asked Jared to just start counting them and let us know when we're starting another one and ending another one, because every time they mandate another report or another audit by state code or state board rule, those are unfunded mandates.
Right.
So there is no audit money included in that. And Jared said last week, what did he say, Scott? Maybe you know, the biggest joke in the business department is someday they'd really like to do something nice for our district instead of continually providing data for the state.
Exactly. That's when we're wondering is when we'll actually be able to do the jobs we were hired for, not the jobs the state are required and mandating us to do.
Right.
Couldn't we do it like the new fee system and have a maximum allowable number of audits per year?
Right.
But no, seriously, I mean, that's the level of effort that's required. There has to be some way to make that covered.
I
don't
think
know.
we should tell them, we will not do the audit unless you provide the money for it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how to, I mean, that was part of my rant in my, my op-ed that I wrote was that, you know, when they talk about, when Jonathan Ball makes his beautiful, he's the head fiscal analyst for the state, for the legislature. For the executive appropriations, I think, is what he is anyway. He makes these beautiful charts that, and the only ones the legislature shows is this very northeast direction of school funding recently, but they never overlay that. They never show us the school student growth. Overlaying that funding graph, or the increase, the significant increase in state mandated reports, audits, and teacher and staff trainings. They never overlay that funding line with any of those things to put it in context of the costs to our districts for all that is being demanded of us. So here's something the governor challenged us last Friday.
That's where I was going.
So do you want to say it?
No, you better get it out.
Did you remember your thing?
I do remember.
Okay, you keep remembering, and I'll talk about the governor. So
That's the same one.
last Friday, the governor challenged us as...
When you say us, what, school boards?
We were in a joint legislative committee meeting, so JLC, superintendents, board members, and business administrators on the Hill, and we were discussing, well, it doesn't matter what we were discussing, but the governor came to visit us, which very magnanimous of him, because that's like walking into the lion's den this year. And he was there just to answer questions. And he as often as I disagree with him sometimes, he is a very gracious person to have a disagreement with. And I appreciated him being there and thanked him for that and for he and his family's ambassadorship for our state. But one of the things that he challenged us to there was, there are 41 school districts in Utah. I challenge each of you to come up with your own bill to sponsor in next year's legislature. Something that will make things better for you. And get that in legislative language. And I think Dan Johnson would be willing to run almost any bill for us that we ask him, because he has really been a champion, and this year he's been the co-chair of public ed committee, House Ed committee, and so I'm gonna. That's one thing that I think that we should bring up in principals meeting next week. Is that next week or 2 weeks?
We got a couple in the bills in the hopper already.
Oh, good.
That Dan's working on. But he also challenged us not to take any legislators on tours anymore, to tell them to go in the classroom and sub for a day, so they can really know what it's like to be in the school. And I think that's a wonderful idea, because I don't think some of them have a clue what our teachers are going through right now.
They don't have a clue, but his challenge for legislation speaks to what Chris is trying to say. Is there some way we can be more proactive instead of constantly waiting on pins and needles for the legislative session to start and being entirely reactive? No, we oppose this. Yes, we support that, whatever. It would make a lot more sense for us to create our own language of what will help our teachers, what will help our district more than the things that you people are thinking of.
Yeah, one of the challenges to me is that, you know, one of the points of interaction for us is like, say, the legislative luncheon.
Mm-hmm.
And when I contrast, you know, what you hear there versus what actually ends up happening, it's kind of stunning.
It is.
Yes.
And I don't, you know, and so I kind of like what you're saying, because we can't rely on social interactions to, you know, to make the point. It's going to take more effort.
Well, social interactions are helpful because whenever you know where someone is coming from, then when I text like Chris Wilson or Scott Sandall, they're my most reliable listeners this year. They text me right back and explain their position or whatever and listen to mine. And it's because I have a long-standing social relation. I build that social relationship with them.
I think that's important.
It's impressive, yeah.
And so that is important. But you're right. The other piece needs to happen too.
Well, I guess I'll just say briefly, you know, I'm eager maybe to learn more about how, you know, and this might be a retreat topic, so that I can help, you know, and we can also weigh in as well on these topics.
Yeah. Well, it would make a lot of sense to be more proactive with legislation, in education legislation, rather than waiting for a neighbor of some legislator to complain to them about something that happened at school today, and they create a bill that affects the entire state based on one incident that's unforgiven. And I appreciate the governor's challenge, and I agree with him. I think we should be more proactive. But what that means is that because they can start filing bills for next year 60 days after the end of the session, which is 60 days from tomorrow. So it starts early that they start writing new legislation for next year.
And they don't always get it from Utah people.
Right.
They get it from national committees that help them create those bills that have nothing to do with what's going on here.
A lot of, quite a bit of talk on the chamber floors this week, being the last week as they talk, is about, well, Louisiana is doing this in their state with this topic, and Florida is doing this with this topic, and you know, and so it's just like
there's been a little bit of one-upping this year, I mean, across the country.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting. Anyone else have a board member report that's more interesting than?
Are you kidding me? That's extremely interesting.
Well, I can go on about legislation for a long time, and that really annoys some people.
It's as interesting as Brittany's part. I mean, come on. Close second.
Absolutely.
We've been well entertained.
So if you notice on the board member reports part of the agenda, the USBA, wow, Emily's so great. The USBA spring regional meeting notices there to remind you that that's on March 15th, where we'll talk about the bills that have come out of this legislative session and being proactive for the next session. So come with ideas, talk to your school teacher friends or your principal friends. I hope that Steve will bring it up in the principals meeting next week to ask them what their thoughts are. Directors, we need to create our own bill. And that's what that spring regional meeting will be about, mostly. If none of the rest of you have anything else, I will move to the board president report, and I just need to ask you, Emily wanted me to ask, with the list that we created for stakeholders reviewing superintendent applications, did each of you speak with those people so she can just start calling them? And it won't be a surprise to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more that didn't get back to me right away, and then she did a few days ago.
Add it on.
I was not sure if that was
Oh,
still
yeah.
soon enough.
Add it
Okay.
on.
All
She
right.
hasn't started calling yet. We wanted to make sure that it wouldn't surprise any of those people if she called them up. So she's plans to start on that next week, so that they have plenty of notice. And she's scheduled I don't know what that little boardroom is called down on the main floor of the Trapper Room. She's scheduled the Trapper Room for April 10th, 11th, and 12th, which is the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, to schedule each of those people to come in and do their review of the applications. And then rather than us starting our interviews on the 13th, we will select who we're going to interview, and then the process will probably end up being like we did with when we hired Jared, that we will have to do interviews the rest of the Thursdays in April to be able to be ready to announce the new superintendent or the chosen the person the first part of May. Does that work for all of you? You've all reserved all of your Thursdays in April for this process. If you haven't, this is your fair warning. Okay, well, I'll tell Emily that she can go ahead and start calling all the people on the list that we've created. And thank you so much for doing that. Thanks for getting that contact information and making those contacts with them. It's a pretty amazing list as I look at it. It's really...
It was fun to have them be so excited.
Yeah.
Everybody being so excited about being asked to do it. In
Yeah.
fact, you and I had one person who actually volunteered.
I've actually had 3 or 4 people volunteer
okay.
from the district level. Or from within the district who want to be on a committee. And anyway, so I appreciate the way this is done. I think it will produce the best results, and I'm excited to watch it happen. Mm-hmm. Okay, Superintendent, I hope you remembered everything.
I did. That was the one thing, and then I'll just send this one out. You probably got it from Lexi too. There was a joint legislative emergency meeting today of the voting members of that committee, and it's too complicated to not have you just read it. So they sent out a press release, but in essence, that particular legislative committee did vote to support the new wording for the Senate Joint House resolution that would...
On changing the Constitution.
On changing the Constitution. And there's a lot of caveats that go with it, and there will be a year and a half or a year and more than a half where if the legislature doesn't perform and do the things that they said they are going to do, then it'll go to a vote from the public, and we could voice opposition at that point. But there's some nice things. Most of the language that was just in statute is now in the Constitution. But I'll send it to you tomorrow, and you can read it, and then we can discuss it next week. We've been here long enough tonight. So.
Yeah. So just a little correction there. It will go to a vote of the people, regardless of whether the legislature does what they say they'll do. Because if they pass this bill, currently the current language just removes the earmark completely for education funding from income tax fund in
supposed to be
the
changed
Constitution.
tomorrow.
And that's why we had an emergency meeting today to, because the representative Karen Peterson in the House is going to suggest an amendment that would put language in leaving education in the income tax fund, providing, which essentially it says, we'll provide this, this, and this for education in general terms, not specific. And once those things are done, then then we can use the rest of the income tax where we need it in the legislative budget, in the state budget. So that's the gist of it. Because the current language says that all income tax will go to public is reserved for public education.
Higher ed, disability, and
But they haven't ever given us all the income tax ever in the last 20, 30 years.
I don't think ever. I'll bet if you went back.
This new language, the committee today felt like is a good faith effort to allow if we support it, is a good faith effort to allow the legislature the flexibility that they want with the budget funding.
We want.
And the language will make it so that we won't be any worse off than we are currently. And we're not worse off. I mean, right now they're going to they're publishing that this year they're giving us a WPU increase equal to 18% or whatever. What they don't tell people is that all but 6% of that, they've already told us how we're going to use it. So anyway, that's what their language is this year.
And then here again, we come back to the word trust. And when we got to the end of the meeting today, everybody just felt like we had to trust the legislative process. Now, I can tell you in 96, they did the same thing. I don't know if it'll turn out any different this time, but I hope.
Well, we haven't ever, I mean, the argument that today was that we've never had it. We've never had it all, and at least this keeps some language for public education in the Constitution. So anyway, that's what it is. Steve will send it to you so you can see what the suggested changes are. That's a lot of legislative talk today.
But it ends tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's done in 20... 29, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 hours. Okay.
Thank you, Superintendent and Terry, for going to all those meetings.
Seeing we are at the end of our agenda, we will adjourn. Thank you all for being here.